When you have a really vivid and really real life, you don't feel necessity to share this life with others. Because once you have a happy private life, you will never spend nights and hours in internet trying to print something very important, something that will show you are not alone.
I could tell you a little bit about kind of my feelings about it right now. I think it started with this friend request that I was getting on Facebook, and I didn't know who it was, and so I kept kind of denying it, but she kept friend requesting me, and then I realized that she was one of my sister's Facebook friends, and I have a twin sister. We were adopted together. And then I realized that she had been communicating through emails with my birth mother.
We want this sense of connection that isn't just, the thing that's happening in your face at that very moment, around you. And because people like sharing themselves, they like sharing their lives and their pictures and their information. I mean, you look at Instagram, and it's a way of showing people what's in your life at that very minute. It's a way of people talking about, their experiences that very minute for people that aren't sharing it or aren't able to share it at that time. They like their friends to know what they're doing.
Connecting to old friends, connecting to my boyfriend, family, just talking to people that I don't usually get to talk to.
We're in a very exciting period where the level of change and the disorienting part of change is still going to be continuing and might in fact become even more pronounced.
Oh, a day doesn't go by without somehow being on social media. There's the stuff that I do professionally. It seems like there are endless requests to connect coming in on LinkedIn or following what's happening at conferences on Twitter. But then there's also Facebook and all of my friends. It's everywhere.
For me, as a director, as a person who need to be in course of what's going on in the world and what's going on here in Kyrgyzstan, social media and especially social networks are the best and the most accessible and the fastest way to have information.
I have found Twitter to be very effective. I found Twitter to be agile, and I think, especially in the political space, it's a way that reporters and consultants and elected officials and activists can communicate with one another in a way that is immediate and that is powerful, and that really you can see the emerging thought process of a story, the zeitgeist of a story, building as you're online. You sense pretty much immediately, this message is working, this message isn't. It's a brutal Darwinian sort of communications platform that didn't exist before, and now you literally can't imagine politics without Twitter.
I would say the online world has been a really important part of my personal life, and it wasn't something that happened intentionally. It just kind of unfolded that way. In some ways you could say it started with my husband. When I first met him, We were at different universities, and our means of staying in touch with each other was email. It kind of makes me think of like romantic stories from 100, 150 years ago, before the phone, when people were, well, they didn't have the immediate gratification, but they were sending letters through the postal mail. And it was, you know, it was through his words, through the way he presented his identity through email, that I really fell in love with him.
Honestly, I remember that weekend pretty vividly, especially that night that I had figured that out, because it had been this like pretty, this gap, kind of this hole in where I came from and that type of thing. And so I was able to kind of fill that void a little bit and make a connection that I wouldn't have had otherwise. Right now, I'm actually kind of hesitant about the whole thing. It's not that I regret the communication, but now there kinds of, it seems like almost like an obligation. Like, since Facebook is something that I check so regularly, you'd think that like somebody like my birth mother and this connection that I've had is something that I would go back to, you know, like, and I would really, you know, like try and focus on that a lot because of the person that she is in my life. But I find myself not doing that, and sometimes even avoiding the fact that that even exists there to begin with.
In our data, there are advantages that people think that they've gotten from the rise of social media, and there are things that they struggle with. So it's not a uniform story. There are pluses and minuses.
It's tough to live in a society or a culture that uses something so much and then try and get away from it, you know, try and not be a part of it.
There definitely is a point of excess with all of this. There's that nice point where you feel like you're connecting to people who you otherwise wouldn't have a connection with and getting to share some details of your life, but there's oversharing that takes place. And I mean, there's something to be said for living in the present moment, for actually experiencing everything that you're going through.
I'm not going to say right now it's causing problems on a major level, but in terms of just when you go to a party, don't you see a lot of people, instead of actually meeting new people, they're on their phone. When you're at a restaurant, people aren't having conversations, they're on their Twitter. It's kind of taking away people coming together as a community because they already have this social media community. People make less of an attempt to make new friends because they get the same attention, social satisfaction, sustainment, the same social feeling through Facebook. But it's a placebo, it's not the real thing, it's not meeting a new person.
If what's on your mind is, what can I tweet about this? What can I say on Facebook about it? You're definitely not experiencing everything that happens in the moment. And I think that's a real shame.
I think as a generation, it like gives us a face. It gives us something that we stand behind and that we're gonna grow into. But I think people need to learn that it's more than just a social media. Like, we're supposed to be using it to connect to people in real life.
In small doses, social media is harmless, but it's becoming such a phenomenon, such a over-encompassing aspect of our culture. The people that you're talking to on Facebook aren't going to be there for you when you're sick or when you're down or when you need a friend. They're going to be there to like your funny video you posted of a squirrel, doing water sports.
There's a big risk to lose a personality in online reality, because we start, first of all, think very cliche. We think with likes, not with thoughts. And we start comparing ourselves with others. And we only see best fake moments of others' lives. And this, I think, this could make us permanently unhappy.
It's tough to be able to look at like what you've said, because it's like you can see kind of evolution as a person. When Facebook says you're born this date, I mean, you might as well have been born that date. And the struggle to be honest on social media is pretty much the same kind of struggle to be honest in real life.
I think that people who are using social media find that they have a moment. And it may not be when they start using it, it may be at some point into it, and they may have several moments where they are confronted with the effects of what they have or have not communicated to others via social media. And that's when they start to realize that it can influence the way that other people perceive them, or that they might use it to manipulate the way in which other people perceive them.
I mean, we see cases like fake profiles all the time. It's because people just don't accept who they are, and they're hiding behind the social media phase.
I feel as if a lot of people want to have a stage persona as opposed to who they are in real life. But personally, I've always kept it one and the same. I don't go on there and act differently, but people do. They try to have a persona, whether it be rock star or a thug, and they're not a thug, they're a normal person.
You want to know the distance between my online persona and my everyday persona? None. Okay? Be honest about who you are. I am aggressive, I am assertive, I am intolerant of stupidity, and I don't hide that. I don't pretend to be something I'm not, because if you do that, the internet is great at revealing that the beautiful chick has really got a package, okay? The internet is great at revealing lies, hypocrisy, and posturing like nothing else that we've ever had.
I think people like to see themselves like how other people would like to see them too. So they're trying to reflect something that's not necessarily that, but it's what they wish it could be.
You've got these profiles that are in the third person, like they're not you, but you start looking and you're working through them, and then you kind of back away, or you have to like come back into third person. And it's tough because once you're in there, when you leave the computer, sometimes you can stay there. I mean, you start looking at your life in the third person, you start looking at the people you're around in the third person.
Ideally, the online should be like offline, absolutely the same. But in reality, we can say that online and offline is like a parallel universe.
I think it was a good thing, because I don't know if I would have been ready for that kind of human face-to-face interaction. And in some ways it did kind of seem like the more natural thing.
I guess I would say social media is not good, it's not bad.
It's a double-edged sword. I mean, yeah, it's allowing people from all over the world to connect to each other, but at the same time, it's giving people excuses to not put themselves out there and to pretend that they're somebody that they're just not.
I just make contacts, and I find people, I find information in internet. But to make conclusions, I try to meet personally.
I think it's a matter of balancing your real life with what you have going on elsewhere. Because yeah, it's a great way of communicating with someone, but it should be used as a tool to reconnect, not necessarily something that you're focused on all the time.
The fact is, whatever you're dealing with, whatever you interact with on a regular basis is a reflection of you and your life.